Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Easy Peasy Books podcast. And I have a very special guest here today, and Joyce is going to be talking to us about something that I love, which is Toastmasters. And I know that you're authors. They're like, oh, we write the book, but now when you have to move it from writing the book into promoting the book and talking to people about it, you might need some help with talking. And so Joyce is an excellent expert to talk to us about it. But she does way more than Toastmasters. But anyways, before we get stuck in, Joyce, can you please introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are and what you do?
You bet. So my name is Joyce Feustel. It's 13 years ago this month that I left my full-time career in sales and went full-time into a business that I'd actually started 3 years prior. And that business is called Boomer's Social Media Tutor. It focuses nowadays on LinkedIn almost exclusively. And we may touch upon LinkedIn here and there. That's not the focus of this episode. LinkedIn is such a great place for authors to promote themselves, to put out material. Anyway, it's just a great platform. That's what I've been doing, coaching business people, that would include authors, job seekers, etc., on how to show up on LinkedIn, how to use LinkedIn. I joined Toastmasters in January of 1997, so I'm almost 30 years long in my membership. And I joined it not long after I moved from a city of 180,000, Madison, Wisconsin, to a 2 million plus metro area of Denver, Colorado. And one of the reasons I joined it is because I just was still overwhelmed living in such a big city area. And it really helped me form a family, if you will, with my Toastmasters club. And I've been in several different clubs over the course of those 30 years, ever since I joined.
I love that. I love that. And, I'll just hop on that whole theme of like how when you join Toastmasters, you're joining a family, but an organized family. And I know that I first joined a club when I lived in Arizona. I was in a club when I was living in Utah. When I moved to Las Vegas, I was in a club. And I've even gone on vacation and checked out Toastmasters clubs. And it's a fabulous way because every Toastmasters meeting is organized and structured the same way. And when I went to Vancouver and I said, hey, I'm here, me and my son also was in Toastmasters. I said, can we come to a meeting? And they were like, yes, so they invited us, but then they put us to work. It was just like, you're the timer. Can you be an evaluator? And it was just like, oh my gosh. So it's a great way to meet people. And that's the added benefit people don't even realize happens in Toastmasters. You get to know people that will clap and cheer for you. It's like no other place in the world. I love that. I love that.
It's amazing. And I to reveal maybe another part of myself indirectly, but it's not a dysfunctional family.
No.
It's a functional, loving, supportive family. And that's what makes it so special, everywhere. They may look a little bit different. There's different chemistry, different ways they may do the order of things, but the feel is very similar, that kind of camaraderie, collaborational, all of that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just so everybody knows, don't think you need to be in the United States to be part of Toastmasters. It's worldwide. It's worldwide. So yeah, you could go to Taiwan. To Toastmasters club. Like you could go anywhere in the world and find a Toastmasters club, and they're all structured the same. So it's just a wonderful thing. So Joyce, you kind of touched on why you joined Toastmasters. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
I'd like to elaborate a little bit more about that. I had just started a sales career. It was October 1996. And the very next month, I was at this function. And I should back up and say I was a membership representative for a regional chamber of commerce here in the suburbs of Denver. So just west of Denver, spanned kind of our whole western swath of suburbs. I had not been in sales before. So it was sort of a stretch, but I kind of was starting to take to it. At this meeting for our members, and it was focused mainly on women business owners of our Chamber of Commerce, a speaker in November 1996 talked about the importance of public speaking when you own your own business, what we're going to be talking about today. And I listened and they talked about Toastmasters. Now here I am, 47, almost 48 years old, had never heard of Toastmasters. What was I, living under a rock or something? So at any rate, I heard about it. I'm like, I want that. And wouldn't you know, at my very table where I was sitting, this lady pops up and said, I'm a member of Energetic Toastmasters. We meet the first and third Tuesdays in building 16 of the Denver West Office Park. And how about you come? We meet at noon. I'm like, what? Were you sent by God? Our Chamber of Commerce was in the Denver West Office Park in building 22. I kid you not. I figured that
Wow.
was a sign. And I went the very next week and I joined about a month later.
Mm, and I love that. And you know, it's nice that you had somebody to invite you to come, and that's good. And I know that with me, I just went the first time by myself. Somebody had told me about Toastmasters, but she lives somewhere else, and she said, "Oh, you can just find a club, and you literally you can just Google it, Toastmasters, find a
Right.
club, and you plug in your city, and it will say, oh, you got one club, 10 clubs. It
Yep.
all depends." And the majority of them are open to everybody. There might be some
Yes.
corporate sponsored
Right. Where they're
ones,
close to the
yeah, that are
employer.
closed, but the
Mhm.
majority of them are open. And the nice thing too is when I first started, I was in Phoenix, and Phoenix, we had tons of clubs. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
was just like, well, which one should I go to? And I literally just went, well, which one? I was a new mom. So I had little kids, and I had to be able to have a babysitter. My husband had to be home. And so I just went, well, I'm going to find one that just works for me time wise. But
Yep.
I went to like two or three because I wanted to get a feel for which is the right club for me. And I did. I visited three clubs, and everybody was so kind. And they said, we'd love you to join us, but no pressure. Please go see another club
Yeah,
and
they
then
will
make your
encourage you.
decision.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I chose that one because of the timing of it. I liked
Mm,
that it was during the day. I was supposed to be at this business leads group every Tuesday, but my manager, the head of the chamber, gave me the permission to go twice a month as opposed to every Tuesday. So that
mm.
freed up that time for me to go to this twice a month Toastmasters club. I think I generally do recommend people visit around the,
Yes.
different clubs, because every club's meeting is different. When you think about it, there's never the same exact people. They aren't talking about the same thing. So give a club a chance. If you kind of like it, but you're not sure, well, come back 2 or 3 times. Then you'll
Yeah.
know. Finally, you'll decide. It's kind of like falling in love. I mean, you just know.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that. I love that. So, okay. So you are a DTM, which is
Mhm.
like kind of having it's distinguished Toastmaster, which is the
Toastmaster.
highest level you can go. And then usually you get tapped for like area governor and, all sorts of things like that. And I'm kind of like, I got like maybe, I don't know, I have my bronze, so it's like, I know they've changed and they have different,
Yeah, they've
different
changed
levels,
the
but
structure.
I have bronze, which is kind of like, I don't know, it's like maybe I have an associate's degree or a bachelor's or something like that. And that's as far as I've gone, but that's okay. Everybody goes at their
Oh,
own
yeah.
pace and stuff. So Joyce, I have to say, you're at the highest level you could possibly be. You've been there for 30 years. Does anybody ever say to you, so why do you still join? Well, yeah, like don't you know
Well,
everything by
to
now?
be honest, I don't bring up the 30 years, except for maybe occasionally as appropriate. So I don't have anybody. Let me make a distinction too. I'm in a home club that anybody can join. 18 years and older is, we're not part of a company or anything, like you were making that
Right.
distinction. I'm also in a couple of advanced clubs. You have to have finished, if you recall, like the competent Toastmaster, it was called at one
Yep.
time, 10
Yep.
speeches. So it's sort of equivalent to that in our current pathway system. So it's for more experienced Toastmasters.
Mm,
So some of these people have been in Toastmasters, I don't know, maybe a couple of them longer than me even. But it is like, okay, so but I think especially there, but even to some extent in my home club, people stay because not only do they like to keep improving as a speaker, as a communicator, it's a chance to give back. And I should say, and as a leader, like an officer of the club.
right.
I think it's such an opportunity close to parenting almost, to start seeing somebody at the beginning and see their evolution as a speaker, as a leader, and to have that mentoring, coaching, go girl, go guy kind of opportunity. It doesn't always happen in our jobs necessarily, especially, of course, if we work for ourselves like you and me. So Yes, that's why I stay to help bring up the next generation of Toastmasters. And what I love in particular about the current iteration of my home club, about 27 members, most are 45 and under. Most they're between 25 and 45, and that's not common in Toastmaster clubs. And I don't have, I hang out with some of this age group in business, which is good, but not in a more intimate way. I mean, like I don't have dinner with a friend whose adult son comes over and we all chat, something like that. No. And I just think they're so delightful. The energy of the Z's and the millennials, so much fun.
I love that. I love that. And I like to about the whole part of giving back, because I know that's something like, I don't know what happened. I thought I was just going to learn how to speak. I thought that's all I thought Toastmasters was going to do. And then one day somebody just tapped me and they said, we'd really like you to be part of the leadership. And, I think I became like marketing, and I did PR, and I was the education. I did the different things. And then one day, I don't know, I left the room. I went to the bathroom. I came back and they said, hey, we want you to be the president. And I'm like, president? What? But you grow.
Yeah, you grow into it.
You grow and grow. And I became a mentor, and I was like assigned to help people. So, it's just wonderful. But a lot of people don't understand the communication. Like they understand the public speaking part, but can you talk about the leadership? Because I think the communications skills and leadership skills you get really can help you in your career and everything that you're doing. Can you talk about that?
And also, I like that they say communication, not just public speaking. See, when you think communication is a conversation like you and I are having right now, that's a type of communication. I mean, that's why I joined, because I was a salesperson and I wanted to have a cogent, comfortable conversation with my prospect, the person who might join the Chamber of Commerce. It's also giving feedback to people. It's standing up there as the evaluator and speaking for 2 to 3 minutes in front of the whole room and telling that speaker what they did well and where they could improve. Now, for me, you're a coach, I'm a coach. We tell people where they could improve. I help them with their LinkedIn. You help authors publish a book. So a lot of times we need to give that kind of tough feedback with love, direct feedback. And so Toastmasters really helps you with that. And it also, I think, helps you to fine tune your thoughts and organize them. I tend to try to talk about too much information and time allotted. So I've gotten a lot better about really just breaking it down and staying on track. Also, I think it's helped me really identify with audiences. So say we've got an author out there and they've done some Toastmastering, built up, their sense of confidence and where they're going. And then they're going to be interviewed in a podcast, or they're going to speak at a local Rotary Club. So then they think, well, who's my audience? I know today authors are my audience. Okay, so that helps a lot. So you think, who's there? How am I going to, who am I going to think about there? What can I find out ahead of time about this audience? How old are they? What do they do for a living? Are they more retired or working? So I think Toastmasters really helps you understand so many elements of the public speaking process beyond actual only speaking.
Yes.
And then leadership. Leadership really is a way to take what you're learning as a speaker and then help to give it back. And there's skills you learn as a leader you might not have a chance in a job environment or even on your own as a business person to get. So maybe you want to be better at social media. Well, gosh, the VP of PR, that's part of what they do is the club social media. Well, there's a handy skill set to learn. Maybe you want to be better at balancing a checkbook, to use an old term, but be better at knowing financially a good fiduciary. In your own life, your own business life will be the treasurer of the club. So think about it. And there's a lot of transferable skills that you can get from being an officer or just plain old mentoring of leaders. There's a president, like the role you had. What an opportunity, again, in a lifetime to help other people develop their skills.
Agreed. 100%. And I know that even if you don't have an officer role, literally everybody, when you go to a Toastmasters meeting, you kind of learn that like everybody has a role. It's like we somebody's assigned to be an evaluator for each speaker. And then there is the Toastmaster who kind of governs the whole meeting, and that rotates each week. They're just, bringing in somebody else to fulfill the role. And you have to make sure, who's my speakers? Do I have an introduction for them? I'm going to read the introduction. Do they have an evaluator? Who's doing the timing? Does he have the cards, or does she have the cards? All these different roles that have to be taken. And my favorite part of the meeting, though, was the table topics, and that's impromptu speaking. And if you want to be a good podcast guest, when you master impromptu speaking, you can nail any interview.
Well, exactly, because it's like a muscle memory thing. When you time and time again come to the meeting, and when you have a smaller part, probably you're going to be called upon, or maybe you don't even have a role that night, but even tell the table topics master, they call them, the person in charge of the impromptu speaking, hey, I'd really like to get a question if I could. So then you get this question that you have no idea what it is ahead of time. And in 1 to 2 minutes, you're to answer that question. That is helpful in conversations like this, in podcasts. I mean, you name it, sales presentations, sales Q&A. After you give a formal presentation and they have the Q&A, you don't know what's coming. No. So it's great. And maybe I'm really splitting a hair here, but I differentiate slightly between extemporaneous speaking, which is really what I'm doing here as a podcast guest, as a subject matter expert, and impromptu speaking. Impromptu speaking is where you have no clue what you're going to be talking about. True. So that's a really good preparation for then extemporaneous speaking. And yes. To do that, you almost just have to jump in and be that podcast guest. I mean, and just think, okay, if they are practice with a friend or something, just yes. Think what you would say with knowing in general what's going to come up, but not having it like planned out.
Yes, absolutely. So that's great. That's great. So, okay. One of the things that happens to authors, so we kind of bring it back to authors, because we now talk Toastmasters up. So we should hopefully have everybody excited. So now if we think about, well, why would an author want to go? And it's a lot of times, we write a book and we're all in our head, we're getting that book written, and now it's out into the world. And now we have to be comfortable going out. And like you said, Joyce, talking on a podcast, maybe getting a radio interview, a TV interview, like you said, going to chambers and Rotary clubs and talking about your book and, those type of things, maybe even speaking engagements at conferences. Yeah. So tell us about how Toastmasters can help us with that confidence, because most people are scared of public speaking. So, it's not just the practicing and, the ums and the ahs and all those type of things. It's that getting over that fear and having that confidence. So how does Toastmasters provide that? Help us with that.
I think it varies a lot by person. Some people come into Toastmasters with sort of a knack for some degree of public speaking, and so it's not their first rodeo or anything. And other people just, they're like deer in the headlights. So I think that one of the best things you can do is to have a mentor and to practice. I was looking at my notes here from ChatGPT. It says, prepare, practice, deliver, reflect. Prepare, practice, deliver, reflect. So I will have, like, on my newer members, especially since I'm the VP of Education this year in my club, they'll be like this on Zoom with me, and I'll be taking notes, and I'll time it and see where they're at. And then when we're done, we'll debrief. So we'll go through it and say, okay, I thought you were sort of rushed at this point. You could have paused a little bit. I think you could have added more energy, some gestures perhaps, make your face a little different, change your voice up a bit. These kinds of things, I coach them through before they ever get to the meeting. And then in the meeting, you're going to get all kinds of written notes from every person. Typically, will write a little note using some sort of form the club uses, and you will get both the oral feedback and the written note from your assigned evaluator. So I go into these very basic elements to help people realize that it's very iterative. This might be a fancy word. So you're going to give, maybe you just start out not doing any prepared speech, just the simple impromptu speech. Well, there's a big step. And then maybe the next time you might do the inspiration, read a quote or read a story for a minute or two. Or maybe another time you'll be the grammarian. So now you're listening for interesting turns of the use of the English language, giving a report. So you do a lot of listening. When you think about it in Toastmasters, more than you do speaking of anything. So I think that as you move along, each time you step up in front of that room, you just keep building that confidence and the fear starts to eventually melt away to some degree. But, I think we all just need some degree of excitement. And they always talk about what the butterflies flying information or something, whatever the classic trait, whatever lines are. And the other thing I do, and I was preparing for my biggest presentation in a long time, 150 people for a national conference. I went through that material every single day for almost a week and simulated it, just did everything, just stood up, practice. You can practice in front of a mirror. And that's very low tech, full length mirror. There's a good one. People are helpful to you. I never practice in front of people, or do it just on your Zoom, through, and then play it back. And that's really helped me a lot. Whatever form you have of videoing yourself with just to your phone. So stand up when you practice, because you stand up when you speak. So all those things I would say is really inhabit your speech. Some people are all worried about memorizing a speech. I am no fan, I see your face, of memorization, because if you are too caught up in that and all of a sudden you cut off track, you can totally blow it and I have no idea where I am.
Yep.
I've seen people walk off of stages in competitive speaking environments because they just lost track and they couldn't finish their talk. Or if it's a talk about an emotion, I saw a woman also have to leave because she was talking about her son who has some disabilities, and it got too much for her, and she was, and she left the stage. So if you decide you're going to talk about when your dad was dying or something like that, you'd better practice that and take kind of the emotional sting out of it. And a lot of people have books that can be very viscerally deep and, lots of emotions, scary things. So when you think about those, how can you present those in an even-handed but still appropriate way? So those are some of my thoughts in terms of inching, kind of it's iterative baby steps, over to wherever your goal is, and it'll always be changing.
I love that. And I know personally that was probably the biggest lesson that I learned at Toastmasters, because I used to be a memorizer and I got messed up once. I was in a contest and I forgot what I was saying. I just lost track of it. And then it was just like, oh no, I'm not speaking. It's like nothing's coming out of my mouth. So it was a terrible experience. And in Toastmasters, everybody said, know your points, like kind of know the order that you're going to say those points, and maybe memorize that first line and that last line, especially.
Exactly. And you can have note cards, you can have your phone. I mean, whatever it is that would help you if you feel you need that. The other thing I remember reading early on and understanding in Toastmasters, when you write, people can reread what you write. It sounds very basic. I recently had knee replacement surgery, so I've been reading even more novels than I normally do. I often reread the whole darn book because I want to see, how did that person really get there? And all of a sudden, little nuances, little foreshadowing sometimes will come in. Where I'm going with this, when you're speaking, they can't rewind what you say. So you have to think about how to maybe say something twice, how to slow down, how to simplify your word choice so that people can get it the first time, or maybe the only time. Usually people don't usually repeat a point. Or to also even emphasize a certain word, like one word, stop, next word, stop. I mean, not stop, but like pause.
Yes.
So you get a lot. Oh, that's a really important word. I better pay attention.
The pregnant pause.
Yes.
I love the pregnant pause. And also too, you just alluded to the fact that it's like, we speak for the ear. When you're going to give a presentation, that's different than when you wrote your story in a book, because in a book, you can go and read and reread it, and you're slow and you're concentrated. But, when you're up at the front of the room and you're talking to people, especially if you're competing with lunch, people are sitting there at the Rotary Club, and they're like, you hear clank, clank, clank and you got to be able to like, boom, have voice changes and your pitch, and slow down and speed up, and body language. How about body language? That's like, wow.
What is the statistic? I think it's like 93% of communication is not about the words you're saying. It's over 90%. I'm gonna say 93. The rest is just everything you were just saying. Everything. The tone of voice, the speed of the voice, your use of your hands and arms and body and your face and all of that. There's so much else that goes into a communication experience beyond the actual words.
So let's do some real world applications, Joyce, in that I'm sure you've spoken at conferences and you could say, okay, I use Toastmasters in preparing, but what about in your job? Like I know you're a LinkedIn trainer. You're using communication skills. I know you love video, so you're using video. So how did Toastmasters kind of help you? How does it help you master video?
Let's talk about video. Yes. Video, and I was reading in Chat GPT. Think of a person that's there. Think of your best client, somebody you love. I mean, this would be more like not your husband or your wife or whatever, but someone you've worked with and think, I'm like talking to Jan. That's who I'm speaking to, speaking into the camera. And then as you're speaking, you become more conversational. You would work on slowing down, having those pauses. And videos need to be short. I mean, they need to be, say, a minute or maybe 2 minutes, depending on what type of video it is, of course, a learning one versus, say, more of a promotional one. So I think that what I've done and had the most success with is by practicing it a lot. And then I go to my videographer, and she has it on a prompter, a teleprompter. So there's the words coming. So I can see them as like having a note card in my hand. And then we go through it. And because I have practiced so much and I didn't have somebody else write that material, I did, a lot of times we get it in one take.
Wow.
Which is really impressive when you think about it. I know. It's incredible, really. So those are the things I would say about video. And also make sure you got all your tech part right. I mean, this isn't perfect here. This environment in this basement is a little dark. But I'd rather use a real life background that's like, oh, there's books over there.
Yeah.
Flowers, maybe. Wonder why she has that black screen behind her. But personality when you're doing your speaking, the lighting, and I played around so much with lighting here and had tech guy come in and help me. Your sound, I have a good mic here, like you have. So those are other things. So you don't want to be worried about that. You want to have that all be set from the get-go.
And I would imagine, I don't really have any experience working with teleprompters because I just, I've always, I kind of love live videos so that it's like I can just show up and be brilliant and everybody will forgive me. Live video is very, very forgiving.
It is really
recorded video. You got to get it right. Nobody has patience for recorded video with oops. And, that's why you have an editor. They cut that bit out. But it's got to be a real skill to read a teleprompter and not look like you're reading a teleprompter. Like True. That's not easy.
That is not easy. Yeah. But I think I knew the material so well that I was just kind of would catch, now and again I would look. But that was a recorded. So it helps. I've worked with that same videographer over 10 years.
Wow.
So when you have that kind of trust in somebody and you've been together, it's like you just kind of jive together. It's wonderful. It's amazing when you think about it. There was some other thought I had when you were asking that question about the video, but if it's important to come back to me, I know we're close to.
Okay.
Time together. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, so one of the things I wondered is like, do you have like a story? Do you have like a story for us where it's just like, okay, I have confidence. I'm thinking of Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music. I have confidence in confidence. I just love that. But have you ever kind of gone in a situation and said, if I hadn't had this career journey in Toastmasters, I'd be freaking out?
Okay, here's an example. I may have started to describe this earlier, but I was at the National Conference of Certified Senior Advisors last August. And I am their kickoff speaker with an hour time in their business development track on Friday afternoon with 150 people in the room. And my challenge there that day was they wanted my PowerPoint up on one screen and then the demo of the LinkedIn itself, which is the way I normally only have that. Like now we're talking about your headline. See, here's my headline. Now we're going to the about section. So I'm having to track between, okay, here I am. I can see it, all this in front of me. But that was a challenge because I've never presented quite that way. Now they gave me 15 minutes at the end. And because I practiced so many times, I came right in at 45 minutes to have the Q&A. And that went smoothly. I'm a very funny speaker in that I use humor well. It lands well. It's not planned typically. So it's a very natural use of humor. And so this guy who was sitting in front, right, literally in front of me, closest I was to any of the attendees, he asked this question about, should you just accept any invite? And I looked at him and I think we'll call him Sid. I say, Sid, weren't you paying attention before when I was talking about that? But you know, it's a good thing you asked that question because there was one more thing I forgot to cover. Now you've given me an opening to talk about, A, B, and C. And so I had so much fun with it. And people came up to me from Friday afternoon till Sunday afternoon when I left. They just told me I just hit it out of the park. They go, you are a rock star. I go, oh, no, you are. I said, I felt like a rock star. They felt, you are a rock star. So I was so excited. All these people wanted to connect with me on LinkedIn. I've got some clients out of it. It was just the most amazing experience. But that didn't happen by magic. That happened because of the preparation.
I love that. That's a beautiful story. And it just goes to show you how, all the practice, it all comes together. And again, even just going back to like a Toastmasters meeting where you have that, table topics and you've just got to come up with that impromptu thing, Q&As in an auditorium and to use it as a teachable moment and going, that's great because that reminds me of, I didn't cover this bit. That's fabulous. And like, who knows how that just like people like, I got to work with that woman. She's awesome. Yeah. And that's what you want. That's what you want.
I think if there's any one common theme in all this is energy. You don't naturally have good, inspirational type of energy that whenever you walk in a room, people feel better. Work on that. Go to therapy, go to a Toastmasters group, go wherever, obviously go to Toastmasters. But I think that even if you make mistakes, people are very forgiving. People give you grace. But if you've got weird energy, you're going to turn off people just right from the get-go. So I say that because we each have our own natural gifts. And if you don't have that particular gift, find a way to bring up that energy, to do whatever you can to center yourself and feel better in that moment before you enter that room to draw upon your energy.
I love that. I love that. And I would just follow up by saying one of the best joys that you'll have at Toastmasters is recognizing that you'll learn how to channel that fear of public speaking into the energy that you just talked about, Joyce. And it's like, we just sometimes think, well, other people don't get nervous. If you didn't get nervous, you wouldn't be a human being. We all get nervous, but the trick is turning it into positive energy instead of negative energy. So
yes, I love how you frame that. That is true.
So
great. I think in a lifetime, what a way to be a gift. Oh, that's the final thing, or towards the final. Think of the audience. This isn't about you, it's about them. And somehow too, when you think of it like that, you don't feel quite so on the spot. You think, how can I serve my audience? How can I help them have a positive experience, help them learn something? So it's getting out of your own ego and all of that and into being a servant leader, and, to have your audience come first.
I love that. I love that. That's brilliant. Well, Joyce, this has just been absolutely wonderful. I think I could talk with you for another 2 or 3 hours. It's just like such a great conversation. But thank you so much for coming and sharing all this wisdom and letting us know how you're using it as a LinkedIn trainer, how you have continued to give back to the Toastmasters community and everything that you've been a part of. And then just as homework of everybody, I'm telling you, go Google Toastmasters, find a club, and go check out Toastmasters and tell them Joyce and Gillian sent you.
Yeah, do that.
Right. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, everybody. And we will hear you back next week. Okay. Bye-bye.